Welcome to the second episode of The Fame Marketer. There you go, I've got it right this time. So, what we're going to talk about today. So, it's the bank holiday weekend. This is our second episode, Michael. Yes, second, isn't it? So, the first one we had Nick on. And today we're going to be discussing workshops. And the reason why we're going to be discussing workshops is because I ran a workshop on Tuesday, Michael.
Oh, I didn't know you ran it. I heard you talk about it. I didn't know you ran it.
I did. We ran it. Actually, me and Sarah ran it, and it was for a client. And I'm going to shout them out actually. So it's Christopher Peters Kitchens. So they're like high-end kitchens, 50 grand start.
Oh wow,
big boys.
50 grand for a kitchen.
Big boys. That's without the the not utensils. Obviously, it's without
appliances.
Appliances, yeah. Serious dough.
Poof.
Yeah, they've done what I think typically most businesses will do, is that they'll focus on themselves, the product, the processes in house, and then they go, fuck. Well, we've got all this now foundation laid. Where's our business going to come from? And actually, that's what they did. So when they reached out to us, was they bought the business a few years ago. They want to get to a certain number of kitchens per month, which obviously equates to X per year. And yes, they're hitting some of those figures, but actually they're nowhere near. Their pipeline's not strong enough. They've been using a bit of PPC. They've been using a bit of this and that, but not massively, and they've not really been getting the results they want. But the reason why they reached out to us is because actually they didn't understand what their market was. They didn't have any idea in terms of what their brand values are or anything like that. So it was just interesting because we've run a few of these over the years, but actually the one on the bank holiday, the one on Tuesday was it was brilliant because it brought me back to, why are we marketing? Why are you spending on PPC? Why are you spending on email marketing? Why are you spending on social? Whatever it is if you don't have those fundamentals or know those fundamentals, it's fucking pointless. You're going to spend a load of money on marketing that's never going to stick, which is exactly what this podcast is about, which is don't waste a load of money on a load of shit. Know your proposition, know your market, and then go out.
Yeah.
Don't do it the opposite way. Don't spend a load of fucking money like these guys have. And to be fair, it's not been horrendous for them, but my God, it can be so much better. And yeah, that's what we're discussing today. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to break down the day that we had with CP and go through what we did in the workshop and actually their feedback in terms of how it benefited them.
Mm-hmm.
So we started the day with just a bit of an end-to-end customer experience. How does that look? So when someone enters their shop or enters a lead form on their website, what is that experience from route to shoot? So from when they first enter the business until they actually become a client, and then actually post-client, what happens? And it was really interesting that what we found out straight away, and again, this is just within the first 10 minutes, we realised that when someone fills in their lead form on their website, there's not enough detail in there. There's not enough detail. Now, there's always going to be a question to be had, which is, should you have more questions on your form because less people are going to fill it out? But actually, in this occasion, because it's such an expensive kitchen, you want detail and you need detail. You can't just have first name, telephone number, and email, because there's going to be a lot of people in market that want a kitchen, but they're never going to be able to afford a 50 grand kitchen. You're talking elite, 1% of the country is going to be able to do that. So, first thing we realised when we looked at that sort of end-to-end customer journey, which is actually before they even speak to anyone at the business, that person, salesperson, account manager, doesn't have enough detail, so they don't know what the budget is. So what we found is actually from that first initial interaction to even just sort of an interaction of some level, the cut-off or the dropout is around 80% of leads.
Oh, wow.
So it's huge. And what's happening is, I know exactly what's happening is people are going, I want an expensive kitchen, like everyone does.
Yeah.
They've gone out and seen Christopher Peters, gone, fucking hell, that's a bit of me, that is. That's bespoke, and it's proper bespoke. And then they've probably have a look round. One of the guys who jumped on the phone with them, or even before that point, they've seen starting at 50 grand, and they've gone, I'll go to Howden's, chat that. Whereas actually, if on that lead form you had a budget, so you had 0 to 35, 35 to 50, 50 to 100, whatever you wanted to do, you could actually disqualify someone easy. So you're not going to have an 80% dropout. You're probably going to have 20%, because we already know that people that enter in that ecosystem, or your lead, your CRM, they've actually got budget rather than just being filled with shit.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really interesting when you looked at that end-to-end customer journey. Even at that first stage, there was an issue. There was an issue already.
Yeah.
80% of leads weren't converting to just like an initial call. That's huge. And also, those 200 leads, let's say there was 200, if only 160 of those if 160 of those are dropping out, that's a lot of money. If you're paying 20 quid a lead, that's a lot of dough.
Mm-hmm.
You're fucking wasting. So that was quite interesting, because like I said, that end-to-end customer journey is where we started, and already you could see where the fallout was. But what was interesting is that these guys had spent so much time and money on their internal processes, certain new employees to help a customer sort of through that, not so much buying cycle, but choosing the type of wood they wanted, the colours they wanted, the drawers they wanted, really looking at how that family interacts with the kitchen. And then, really you can imagine, it was bespoke as anything, it was proper unique. They'd put so much effort and resource in there, and then went, we ain't got any leads. So with straight away you could see that's the problem there. So that's where really we started. But then we went on to the brand values, because without that we couldn't then go into actually what type of marketing or what sort of that messaging. So what we did is we got in. There was 5 of people from the business and 2 of us, myself and Sarah, and all of us wrote down 5 to 6 words that described that business. So I used the word posh. And then we had expensive, we had exclusive, we had detail, we had, there was tons. But what was really interesting is that when we put them all on the board, and then Sarah said, right, let's pick out the top 5, the ones that weren't really applicable. So the things like handmade, okay? So handmade. And this was where, me and Sarah really came into our own, because we were looking at handmade and going, well, if we go into any kitchen store in the UK, I could go into B&Q, and what am I buying? A handmade kitchen. So it's pointless, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're not. There's no differentiation there. Is there? You're not different in whatsoever. So what we did is we took out those ones that are, handmade and exclusive, because yes, it's exclusive, but that's on everyone else's brand. Yeah. Everyone's going to say exclusive. You go to Howden's, you go to whoever and see exclusive. So we got it down to 5, and it was already clear that the message that business has been putting out to its clients had been wrong over the years. Not because it's any fault of anyone. It was just that you just don't think about it, because unfortunately, just naturally, you're going to copy Howden's, you're going to copy these other firms that are doing very well, who are bigger, because these are these are small business in comparison to those other guys. And yeah, it was brilliant. So actually, when you looked at those sort of brand values and that certain terminology, it was then going on to that next stage, which is how do we then communicate those 5 messages to an audience, which was brilliant. So it might be, things like exclusive, although we didn't have it in our 5, we wanted people to wanted to feel like having a Christopher Peters kitchen was an exclusive experience.
Yeah.
A bit like I think I used the example when we were in the meeting, which is like some handbags. There'll be some handbags that are like one-off handbags. They're exclusive. You can't just walk in and get them from Next or wherever. You're proper exclusive, and that's what I wanted. That's where we felt that the brand needed to go. you're excited to have a Christopher Peters kitchen. Like, not many people have one of these. You can, your friends can come around and go, obviously different planet to what I live in. I've got a Christopher Peters kitchen. For me and you, Michael, we wouldn't know, would we? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
We'd have no idea. But you wanted that exclusivity. But now, once we got that down, we then went, right, if these are our 5 sort of core terms that we're going to use now, who are we trying to sell to? So we're actually looking at our marketplace, who are we selling to? And there was actually, when you looked at this, there was actually a few markets. So you've got, obviously, consumers. So consumers that have a vast amount of money. £50,000 on a kitchen is a lot of money. So it's, ones that, are in decent sized houses. You've got the space, probably living rurally. So location wise, it's a very affluent areas. Places like London, sort of Foss Way towards Bath, we sort of looked at that area, Gloucester Way, sort of High Wycombe. So actually, you could sort of see a little snake actually from Leamington to London. That was sort of their key. So already we got our location, brilliant. Typically, it's going to be sort of high-end, high net worth families, or empty nesters, so people that have just got rid of the kids, they've got a bit of disposable income, they've just pretty retired, and again they're very well to do, but it's their last sort of. They're in their home for life now. They want to get it ready for grandkids, kids, whichever. And then so if you look at the consumer side, that was the consumer market. Great. If we look at those 5 brand terms, how do we portray that message to each of those two audiences as an example? And it was brilliant, because if you've never looked at that before, normally you'd say high net worth family. You're gonna go on, Christmas, have a nice Christmas kitchen for Christmas, all the things that we pretty much see when we go into a kitchen store. You can imagine the type of terminology they're using, and what those hooks are. So if you look at those 5 brand terms, then to those audiences, you're forgetting about the normal hooks you'd see in a Howdens, in a B&Q, and a Homebase. Obviously, they're nice kitchens, aren't they? But it's a different kettle of fish altogether. So we focused on what those brand terms are, and how we then portray that message to one of those audiences or both of those audiences. And already you could see that the messaging changing massively. It wasn't about Christmas and all that shit, and it's not rubbish, is it? But it was more around, right, we know what the hooks are, we want it to be in those brand terms. And it worked really, really well. But then what came out of it is that actually they haven't just got that one marketplace. They've also got trade, and they've got B2B to C. So that'll make a little bit more sense in a minute. So you're looking at people like architects, or you're looking at interior designers. So they may have a house in Leamington, let's say, where they're doing the entire house, and obviously kitchen's part of that. The interior designer would, 2 ways. They would either put them in touch with Christopher Peters to do to help with the design, or they would just say, right, here's the design, can you do it? And actually, what was really interesting was that when we actually did a bit of a mapping, so we did a scoring. So we mapped out those audiences, and we actually scored them. And I've actually got them here, actually, the scores. So let me just pull this up. I just want to show you what we've done, actually, Michael. So we evaluated each market. So you've got the B2C channel, which we just discussed. You've then got your B2B2C, which is again sort of those architects, interior designers, those type of people. And then you've got your channel partners, so people that are going to refer you in. So it might be like an expensive insurance firm. They had a local tailor that passed them leads, and they get a sort of referral fee, which is brilliant. So it's advantageous for everyone. But what we did is we scored this on a couple of things. So the first one was average client invoice. So you put an invoice against each one, so between 1 and 10. We did the same for potential market size. We did retention rate, lifetime value. So again, that's someone, how much can they spend over 10 years? The lifetime of them being a customer. So there might be a kitchen, but they may come back and say, actually, can you do some cabinetry for us for a boot room or something of that ilk? Risk of external factors, opportunities of external factors, threat of competition. So again, are they more likely to go somewhere else? So in the consumer world, yes. For a channel partner, if they trust you, unlikely, because they trust you, they're never really going to go anywhere else. And ease of relationship management. So actually, when they become a client, how easy is it to deal with that customer? You know, are they a bit of a ball ache? Are they a bit of a pain in the ass? And again, you know, we scored all of those. And what was really interesting was the one that came up on top was the B to B to C. So again, those interior designers, those architects, because the lifetime value is high. They're easy to deal with. They know what they want, and actually, it's a good client to have. You know, profitability is high because they keep coming back and back. The second with consumers. So again, just someone in the kitchen, and then the third was the channel partners, so those referrals, because obviously you're not entirely sure what referrals someone's going to give you.
Yeah.
The fact that was their number one market was a bit of an eye opener. They're like, oh, fuck, we've never looked at it that way. But again, until you sit down and do a workshop, and again, anyone can do this. You can do this internally, can't you? You know, we as a business, to be fair, we're not very good at this, and we need to be. Which is, you know, one of the reasons we did this with these guys. But actually, it's something that I want to bring in the next few weeks, which is let's do it for ourselves. Because actually, it was, like I said, it was bloody eye opening. But that sort of evaluating your current client base, again, massively open them up. So not only at this point do we know what their brand values are, so again, sort of those 5 key messaging, we now know our audiences, and we actually know which of those audiences are most profitable. So when we do start spending on marketing, right, who do we go after first? Well, B2B2C, of course we're going to. It'd be stupid not to. You wouldn't go after channel partners, would you, if it's not making you enough money? But we also know what the lifetime value, and we understand how that all works. So again, you're going to be putting your hard-earned media spend in the right places, not just in any old fucking place.
Yeah.
So we went through that, and then the sort of next bit we went on was the competitive landscape. What are your competitors doing? What do those competitors look like? Why are we losing out on deals? Is it because they're cheap, or is it because, you know, what are we doing? And again, that was really interesting because you had different people within the business having different opinions. So salespeople will naturally say it's always about price. It's just the nature of the beast. You know, even me and Jake internally, we have, you know, discussions about why we lost a deal, and, you know, because we're salespeople, we'll go, oh, it's because of price, which is fine. The reality is, it's fucking not. It's because we didn't pitch it up well enough. It wasn't right. We didn't listen to their objectives at the beginning. There'll be a number of reasons, but get out jail card is always someone's cheaper. It's a load of bollocks.
Takes the blame off you then, isn't it? It's like, oh, it's the price. They never would have wanted it anyway.
But it's a load of shit.
Yeah.
It's a load of shit. And we know that, you know, we're not naive to that. But it was just really interesting because, again, you know, if I look at, you know, you could be anything. You could be an accountancy firm. You could be anything at all. If you're a marketing manager or business owner, look at your competitors and figure out, you know, do some spot research, you know, go and get some fake quotes from them, do whatever. Just understand how they interact with your customers or your potential customers. And it might be that they're more expensive. Well, why are they? You know, it might be that they've got a better product or service. You know, it could be a number of different things, but until you understand what they are or how they're interacting with those prospects, you can't really say why you're losing to them. And again, what was brilliant about this is that we identified straight away what they were doing. So one firm, which I won't mention, but they were essentially like a sales beast. So they were no different than Christopher Peters, really. The product was a bit inferior, so it's not as bespoke. And I'll go into bespoke, actually, and unique, and all the sort of terms we went into when we look into some of the copy. But they would do the same process. So, you know, sort of free consultation, do the design, all that stuff. £500 sort of referral, you know, sort of consultation fee, and they go up to that. So the sort of same sort of sales ladder. But the second they'd then quoted on the job, it got passed from the niceties, and it's the biggest firm that they were against. It went into a call centre up in the north, and they were just fucking hammering. You know, when your contract's up for your phone or something, you just get bombarded.
Yeah.
Normally people from Newcastle going, "Oh, hey man," you know, they would go. But they said, and everyone knew it, and they were actually losing some jobs because they were so relentless. Now, this firm that we're dealing with said, "Look, we don't want to act like that," and I agree. But also, if you're losing deals,
there's something in that, yeah.
There's a case to be had, surely. There's a case to be had to say, well, actually, yeah, you're right. We don't want to be, you know, gorillas on the phone. But if they're winning fucking business from it, because it's only one little part of the journey, isn't it? If you've had a really good experience up to quotation, you've then been quoted by someone, but you've got a small window of opportunity, which is say 3 to 4 weeks of I'm going to make a decision, and then you're back on with that experience that you had in the first place. Would you not just go fuck it? Let's go wild for 4 weeks on these bastards.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's just go wild and just get them closed. Now, like I said, you know, we're going to get Callum on the podcast, aren't we? The phone jacker, and he'd probably say the same. Just get on the phone. You know, they've clearly got a need. You know, they've already asked for a quote. You've already spent money on them. Let's get them closed now. Let's not get them. Let's not get them. Let them going anywhere else. Let's get them closed. But that was one thing. That was how they were losing on some of these deals. And then the other thing we found, and again, it was only when we started speaking about this out, sort of, you know, out in the open, which is one competitor would price really high, but then they would come down really quickly. It's a bit like window sales, all that stuff, you know, double glazing sales. You'd start really high, but you can pretty take off about 50% of the price. And again, for those guys, that was really annoying because the client feels like they're going to get a really good deal. They're getting a $100,000 kitchen for 50. They're not. They're getting a $50,000 kitchen, but it's just the way we've been sold to. So again, yeah, we sat there and went, right, well, is that good or is that bad? Now, they don't want to act like that, so they've said, that's not us, which I totally agree, and I agree with them on that. But if they're winning more business, is there a case we had to say that works?
Yeah.
It's against their brand values because it's not how that business operates. So I agree, let's not do that. But there are occasions, again, and there'll be people listening to this going, yeah, we could do that. Well, bloody do it. If it's winning you more business, follow the money.
Yeah.
You know, follow the conversion. And if that's going to get you more conversions, fucking do it. You know, it doesn't make any sense. But again, that competitor landscape, you know, that competitive landscape where those guys are in, it was just really interesting to see what other companies were doing. And actually looking back at ourselves and for these guys, it was, yeah, we've got to change. We've got to get better at following up. You know, that was one thing they said straight away. You know, they have such a lovely experience, but actually there's no automation. You know, with their CRM, which we'll go into, which we spoke about. But actually, it was just that was it. They were sort of left alone to make a decision. Yeah, we'll follow up with them, but it wasn't like, you know, like a Jake or I in our, you know, firm when we're constantly on the email or on the phone to people or text going, look, you know, do you want to work at Vertex or Z? It was totally different than that. So that was quite interesting.
And with such a high drop off rate with those, especially the people that you do get that are interested, you're going to really have to follow them up quickly. Otherwise,
well, yeah, exactly.
If you're losing so many % of people just by your price, and the people that are interested, you're really going to have to follow up with closely. Otherwise, it's going to be a while before you find somebody else.
As far as I was concerned, if someone was spending £500 on a consultation fee, an additional £1,500 on like a design fee to get literally the design of the kitchen, that's £2,000 someone spent then. Now, I know on a £50,000 kitchen it's not a lot of money. You know, it's not even, you know, it's just 5%, but it's still a lot of money, isn't it?
It's a show of intent as well.
It's a massive show of intent, and they should be converting. They should convert. They should have got over the line. There's no reason why they shouldn't have. They should have got over the line. So yeah, that was quite, you know, like I said, it was just one of those where you look at it and go, fuck, these guys and girls are doing something different, and yes, it's working. And is it against our brand? Yes. But is it producing conversions? Yes. So what do we do? What you look at is actually where your market position is. And so that was the next point we went on to, is that, right, we know who your competitors are. We know how they position themselves. But how do we position ourselves? And then it goes back onto that core value bit, which is those 5 points, which is it's exclusive, you know, it's unique. And then that was really interesting when we were talking about sort of the uniqueness of the product, because, again, I didn't know this, but when you go and get a bespoke handmade kitchen, it's not really that bespoke. So what they'll typically do is they'll do like sort of like a 600 by 400 drawer, a 600 by 400 drawer, 400 by 200 type thing. So the only thing you're changing is the colours,
yeah,
the handles, and the top. So actually, it's not bespoke. It's not handmade. Whereas these guys Every single bit of it is unique to you as a client. So I said, well, that's the hook, isn't it? Surely, people are going out to market going, I want a unique, exclusive, handmade, bespoke kitchen. They're not fucking getting it. And I used a good example. So I've got a camper van, as you know, Michael. And when me and my wife were looking for a kitchen, we were like, right, do we get one straight from VW, or do we get like a handmade one, a bespoke? It was only when I went round all of these different camper van dealers, I realised that, each dealer has, or this or conversion will have a different slight look and feel. When you boiled it down, there's only so big a camper van is. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
They're all the fucking same. It was like work thing, one with cupboard things, top, tap. That was it. Like there was no different. The only fucking different was the colours, or the type of like ups and downs, or the drawers you would do. There wasn't massive differences.
Yeah.
And it was the same with this. And again, I didn't know this. So even though you're spanking, let's say 40, 50 grand in a kitchen, a lot of it isn't truly handmade. It's you sit within a process, and you have your different colour, you have your X, Y, Z. So it's not bespoke. Whereas these guys, it's like fucking. They measure you as a person to see how the top should work, all stuff like that, which is.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, look, the fact that you do that, that's it. That's your hook. And they were worried going, well, we don't want to call out other firms that are calling it bespoke, because that's what the market does. The market, like we said earlier, if you go into Homebase, you go into any old fucking kitchen fitter, they'll say all the same things, exclusive, handmade, all the rest of it. We're not going to, I said, look, let's not worry about what the competition is doing in terms of, let's not call them out, but let's educate the market on your product, on your service, on what you do. Forget about what everyone else is doing. So obviously the backhander is that people are going to go, well, if they do this, and if we do a good enough job, they'll go to another kitchen fitter and go, oh, yours isn't it's not exclusive then, because it's a bit. No, these guys will educate the market, which is amazing. So they love that. But again, we wouldn't have been able to know that without those pieces of that workshop. But again, it was just one of those you would have no idea. Like you and I, we'd go and buy a kitchen, wouldn't we, and go, well, normally our missus would go, yeah, I want that, and we'd go,
that looks all right.
Yeah, that's right. I do. Can I have toast on it? Yeah, brilliant. As long as it's got a toaster. But it was like I said, it was just pure eye-opening that happens, even at that level. 50 grand. Like it's not properly handmade. But again, unless you'd have gone through all that process of that workshop, I'd have never known. They've used us for social media, they've used someone for PPC. The PPC agency they're using, do they know that? I'd say doubtful, if I'm being honest. Because if they didn't know it before the workshop, how can they then interpret that to the PPC agency? They can't, it's physically impossible. So yeah, we sort of went into that sort of market position, really evaluating that, and we saw quickly where they position themselves. It's what they want to be, which is exclusive, but not an exclusive deal. It's an exclusive product that you can't get anywhere else. This is one of a kind, handmade, properly. So let's educate the market on that. So that's where they wanted to position themselves. And I couldn't. You're like this actually. So they were talking about one kitchen firm. Do you know how much they charge this kitchen firm? What do you reckon they start at?
How much they charge the firm? Yeah. Oh, you mean what the firm charges?
One of their competitors, yeah.
Charges for what?
A kitchen.
Oh.
What do you reckon?
More or less? More. Starts at like basic.
I don't think it's a basic.
No, but like the base level for them.
Yeah, for them, yeah.
More than 50 grand.
Mm-hmm.
How much?
300.
Deal.
They're called Artichoke. 300. I couldn't believe it, honestly, mate. When they said, I was like, 3. They're like, yeah, I was like, fuck.
That's crazy.
That's a lot of dough. A lot of dough. So we're going to the next one. So where did we go on there then? We then went on to the sort of evaluating their client base. So we'd sort of done all that. We got to the point where we sort of knew where they positioned themselves. We knew what the brand terms were. We know we're going to talk to our market. But what we want to evaluate actually how much of the market they've got. So again, if we looked at those three sort of segments, we looked at the B2C, B2B to C, and then sort of channel partners. How big is each market, and what percentage of that market do we already hold? So obviously B2C, it's constant. There's going to be people in market, out of market, quite rapidly. Whereas the sort of B2B, B2B to C, and the channel partners, we sort of know what the market size was, but they hadn't had a lot of share. They didn't have a lot of market share. So it's like, okay, well, we know what we're going to do in the B2C market, the consumers, because they're always going to be in and out. People aren't always in market for a kitchen fitter. Sorry, a new kitchen, so they will just naturally come in. But for the for those two sort of B2B trade elements, we're going to really go out to those guys and push and tell them about us. And some of the ideas we had were things like events, which actually we're going to discuss on another podcast, actually, Michael. And really educating them on, what value could we give to that trade partner. So it might be, I think we give the idea of, how to upsell a kitchen into your clients. So it's advantageous for that, that interior designer then to get a kitchen job, which is going to bring them revenue. So you sort of, really bring that in. So we looked at that client base, saw what the market size was, looked at their market share, and went, okay, there's clearly movement here. Let's look at that. And again, we looked at in terms of the consumer side, how many people are searching for new kitchens every month. And again, we're not looking at just new kitchens, we're looking at high end fucking the big boy stuff, not the world we live in, Michael. And again, we then understood how that looked and how big a market it is, and then we could obviously then start looking at from a media spend perspective. We've reverse engineered how many leads we need based on the figures they've currently got, but we took out the sort of that 80% at the beginning and tweak that. So we know pretty much going into next year, or this year going into next year, what their media spend needed to be, as long as their cost per lead was X. Now, they're quite lucky. They don't need hundreds of thousands of sales each year in terms of volume of leads. They need a small number of kitchens, because obviously if they start at 50, they go up a lot higher. So it makes it a lot more palatable, but we've still got to convert them. What else do we speak about? We spoke about segmentation and personas. So although we looked at sort of the demographic of that person, so let's say the consumer side, we looked at how they interact, what channels they're on. So if you're looking at typically someone spending £50,000 on a kitchen, they're quite affluent. Mm-hmm. Typically the wife is a stay-at-home mum, typically. And that's not me saying that, that's just naturally what happens. When you look at their client base, so you've got two different people there. You look at the husband, which is sort of like the finance guy, who's the decision maker, but you've also got the wife then, who's the influencer, who's going to actually be making the majority of the decisions, but she's not actually signing off the check. Mm-hmm. So you start looking at those personas, each one, and going, well, how does that look? What channels are they on? Is he on LinkedIn? Yes. Is she on Instagram? Yes. Is she on TikTok? Yes. Okay, there are two channels we can operate in. What message do they want per one? So the husband is probably going to be a lot more finance driven, whereas the wife is going to be more aspiration. How do the kids operate in there? How can I make the Sunday roast? All that stuff. But tying into that initial piece, which was the brand values. So you start, really tying it all in together. But it was interesting with the personas because, again, you try not to pigeonhole too much. Like I've said, someone who's quite affluent, the woman stays at home. When you actually break it down, there are some similarities that you just go, well, that's just the nature. It's not that we're being crass or anything. It's that's just how it is. And again, looking at the client base, and it was just interesting that that's genuinely what happens, which is a bit mad. And then once we'd figured out those personas, we then went into the exciting piece for me, which is the content pillars. So what does each prospect want to see in terms of content? Mm-hmm. So channel, again, they're very different in terms of consumer. So what type of content do they want to absorb? Where do they want to absorb it? Over what channels? So it might be social, might be TikTok and Instagram. You might have email. So is it plain text versus HTML, a bit of both? And again, we spec'd all of that out. So we saw very quickly that actually looking at some past data is that some of the stuff hasn't worked for them. So we went, okay, well, let's just remove that straight away. It's pointless spending money in there. We know it's not converted.
Yeah.
It's not even helped. It's not, there's been no value added there. So let's remove that straight away. But again, we sort of looked at all those content pillars and those themes and went, okay, we know where we stand now. Again, putting it all into one. That is what we did. And then, so once that had sort of, we'd sort of finalised all that, which again, this probably took, by this point, 4.5, 5 hours. It's just, it's very detailed. Especially when you've got such differing opinions of people in the business that they all deal with the customer in different ways, which is good. We then went on to the sort of, the key point, which is the journeys. What journeys are we going to send people on? So once they've entered our ecosystem, whether it be social, whether it be email, how are we going to interact with them over what part of the journey? And this is where, again, for these guys, it was really apparent that they had actually quite a lot of leads. They were quite fortunate, really. What they didn't have was any automation, like at all. So they used HubSpot, but they didn't have any sort of automated email journeys, any triggers, no retargeting. So again, someone got a quote. One of the ideas I brought to it was, we want to put in content on their social feeds, which is, not just case studies, but also like, this is what we did for this client. Look at this. Look how this drawer pulls out. Look how they were explaining this bin to me. I still don't know the double bin thing. I was like, I think I'm so non-posh, I don't even know what that means. But you want to become omnipresent. You don't want to suddenly just be like, you're on email with certain content, but it changes as their journey with you changes. So we started sort of mapping that out. And again, it was really interesting that what they hadn't thought about was actually how do we map that journey internally, not from what they receive, but sort of how do we, in a pipeline, how do we look? Do we put, they've had a consultation or they've done this, they've done that. Actually, how do we look at that? So again, that was something they had to go away and sort of figure out. Because that was that's a business decision. That's just not a little bit of a workshop. But it was interesting that because without that, we then couldn't go, well, when they hit this part of the journey, we can then trigger this. Like, you can't do that unless that first piece has been done. But again, it was really interesting that a firm of that size hasn't yet done that. And I think that's normal. I think a lot of companies, even us, we've got very good pipelines. I look at it every 3 weeks ago. Should we change that? I get itchy feet. My ADHD doesn't help, to be fair, but I do go, can we change that? Do we tweak that? But not many firms have done that, which means they can't do anything else. They can't do the triggers. They can't do the automation, which is a killer for them, really. And that really, in all, Michael, was our sort of workshop. I won't describe lunch. I was a bit disappointed with lunch, actually. 13 quid a head. Disappointed. I won't rat them out.
It wasn't a bespoke lunch.
It wasn't a bespoke. I can tell when I've had a bad lunch because the cherries aren't juicy. They're a bit limp, a bit lifeless. But yeah, that was our workshop. But for marketing managers and business owners listening to this, if you haven't sat down and gone through, and if anyone, we're already staged in this podcast, so I'm going to say this like we would say about the other podcast, but if you want like what word I'm looking for, if you want a template for how to run a workshop internally, reach out and I've got one that I can send you. And I think I think everyone should do them and involve everyone in the business that deals with customers, because they know that they'll know something you don't. Even though you are a marketing manager or you're the business owner, it's like you think you know it all, but we don't. I'd love to admit I know everything, but I definitely don't. Even you, Michael, you love interacting with some clients and gone, something that I don't know, and a lot of our team, especially the client services guys. So, if you are looking for a template, let us know. But it's something I'd recommend. Actually, I'm glad I did it this Tuesday because I've not done one for a while. But it just, like I said, it brought everyone up to speed and just opened everyone's eyes up to the stuff we don't know
Mhm.
that we should. So I guess that's going to round off episode 2. I don't know how long we've been going on this, Michael.
About 40 minutes, I think.
Really?
Mhm.
That's good. I was trying to get it down to half an hour, so I need to time the next one. But thank you for listening to episode 2 of The Fake Marketer. And on the next one, you'll be hearing from myself and Callum.
Ooh, ooh.